When you play the Game of Thrones, you
subscribe and like,
or you die. There is no middle ground.
Alright, hello YouTube, welcome back to the Grease Comedy channel. Today's video will be continuing our Clash of Kings reread. Hope you guys enjoyed the prologue, a very long video, took a lot of effort, so I hope you guys did enjoy it. The audio wasn't perfect. I'm still trying to figure out how I want to do audio down here. It's just difficult because I'm in a basement, so audio travels very differently than in my room, which is carpeted. But we're still trying to figure it out, so apologies for that. But let's not waste any time. Let's get into Arya 1. But I do want to give us a little bit of a reminder of where we left this character in A Game of Thrones. So George R. R. Martin kind of leaves Arya on very much a cliffhanger. The last thing we see of Arya is basically Yoren has a knife to her, basically taking out her hair, it would seem like, or whatever. It's not made specified. It's very much left open to interpretation. And so it's not like the show at all. In the show, season 1 ends with Arya actually leaving the capital. That's going to happen in this first chapter. And so just a little bit of a refresher of where we are exactly in Arya's journey. But that'll get us into page 22 of Arya 1, Clash of Kings. Arya thinks how she had once thought that nothing could be worse than at Winterfell being called Horseface. But now she had been named Lumpyhead by Lamy. You got to think, Arya's just basically gotten a haircut, especially with Arya where it's like a very short cut because you're trying to say that Arya is a boy. It's going to leave a lot of blisters, a lot of, things like that. And also, it's Arya at a time where she's already grieving for her father to also be being bullied and picked on. It's going to remind her of those, things at Winterfell. She remembered the day her father had died. Her head did feel lumpy because on that day she thought Yoren meant to kill her. But instead, he hacked off her hair until there was only stubble left. He told her he was taking men and boys to the wall. Yeah, just clearing up everything that we kind of saw at the very end of the last book. It wasn't made very clear like I talked about, but Arya under a lot of stress, right? Your whole appearance is basically being changed by this, and you're having to run away from your father and everyone you've ever known and trusting Yoren to take you basically home. Yoren had told her that leaving the city would be the easy part, but the road to Winterfell would be hard. But the people with her, with this party with Yoren, they were not like Jon, right? Jon is someone very honorable and all those things, but the other black brothers that were coming to join were not going to be like that at all. Some of them would be wanting food or just some sort of clothing. Others would be taken from the dungeons and could be some of the worst criminals of King's Landing. As Ned had given Yoren access to the dungeons, if any of these men knew who she was, they would sell her to the queen. Only half of them would, I'm not going to say that word, but let's just say sexually assault her first. YouTube's not a big fan of that word, and especially this early in the video, we're not going to say that. From now on, she must keep to herself and go to the bathroom in the forest away from anyone and to not drink more than she needs. A lot here for Arya, right? Not only is she having to leave the city, she's putting on this whole different persona. She also has to pretend she's a boy because remember, the Night's Watch doesn't take women. And so Arya is having to live a lie and also among some of the more dangerous people of the city. If you're, a common person, let's put this into perspective, right? Let's not just get Arya's perspective here. If you're one of these people that, you're so desperate that you're willing to go to the Night's Watch because you can't feed yourself. Think about Arya's last chapter in A Game of Thrones. She was struggling to feed herself. And you find out that Arya is a Stark. Well, you don't know what's going on with the Starks and Lancers. All you've been told is that, it seems like Ned Stark tried a coup to take over the throne. Arya would be his daughter. This would be a way for you to get some sort of coin and to change your entire life. And so I know that Yoren tries to put into her head really badly that these people are not great people, but you got to also look at their circumstances of their life and why they would try to sell her out. It wouldn't be a personal thing. It would be survival. Avoiding this life of going to the Night's Watch, because some of the people going there are not criminals, or at least are not known criminals, but others are. And of course, Yoren does have the right of it. A lot of these people probably would sexually assault her as well. So not a great look, kind of shows the brutality of this world. But another thing to touch on, it's kind of interesting, right? Arya's last chapter is all about struggling how to get out of the city. And here Yoren is saying, it's going to be pretty easy. The problem is going to be on the road. Because if you remember what's going on, Robb and Tywin are at war. You have Stannis gearing up for war. Renly is at war. Again, the roads are not going to be very safe, and that's going to be the dangerous part of their journey, which Yoren is completely correct on. But getting into page 23, Yoren had been right, as when they came upon the gates, it had been easy. He only needed to call to a guard, and they were sent through. People just know who Yoren is, and you're not going to be expecting Arya to be with the Night's Watch all these boys and things like that. You're just not going to be looking there for Arya. And I think that's what guards would be thinking, right? So you can't blame the guards here. And they're looking for a specific girl. They're looking for a highborn girl. Arya doesn't look like that right now. And Arya even thinks this. She knew they would be looking for a highborn girl, not a skinny boy with his hair chopped off. She wished the water and the rush would sweep over the castle, taking everyone with it, especially Joffrey and the queen. But then she thought of Sansa and decided to wish for Winterfell instead. It's one of those weird things because if you think about Sansa, she's someone that didn't really think about Arya at all after Ned's coup. And here you have Arya, even in this just moment of thinking about, wanting all these bad people to go away, she thinks of her sister, right? It just shows very how intelligent I feel like Arya is, or mature she is. She's kind of the polar opposite of Sansa, like we talked about all in book 1. But Yoren had been wrong about one thing. Pissing had not been the hardest. The 2 orphan boys, Lami and Hot Pie, had been the worst. Yoren had found them on the streets and promised them food and shoes, and they had come along. But even as they left, Yoren had told them the wall needed good men, but they would have to do. Lami and Hot Pie are not exactly the ideal recruits for the wall, but they need anybody, right? They're struggling for men. But Lami and Hot Pie, it's weird because, we're seeing the story from Arya's perspective, of course, so we're not going to like Lami and Hot Pie at first because they're kind of bullies. But at the same time, you look at these kids that have been basically left to fend for themselves. Hot Pie, his mother died, and he was kind of like helping her bake and things like that and run her business. What are they supposed to do in this world, right? They're basically just left to die. And you understand that and you feel for them a bit, but at the same time, they also don't present themselves that well to Arya. Yoren had taken others from the dungeons, thieves, and once again, sexual assaulters, but, there's another word in there. There were 3 that seemed particularly even scare Yoren as they wore fetters in the back of a wagon at all times until they got to the wall. Very interesting, one of these especially. Well, all 3 of them are actually pretty important to the story, but when we do get to Jaqen and when we learn more about the character and wondering why he was here, that's a whole video for itself. But for this chapter, they are just 3 very dangerous people to Arya. The 3 that were being locked up had been found in the black cells. Arya notes Aurorge, who was missing a nose, and Biter with his sharp teeth and bald head, with weeping sores on his cheeks and eyes. Yoren had also gotten supplies in King's Landing as he left with 5 wagons of supplies, like ravens, hides, parchments, and ink. He had also bought 2 horses and donkeys for travel. Arya herself would have preferred a horse, but the donkey was better than the wagon. This is exactly like Arya. Like, some people might prefer to just sit on the wagon all day, but Arya is somebody that likes to explore. She's very tomboyish. It fits kind of her personality. You think back to book 1 when Sansa is getting to ride in the big wagon or whatever you want to call it. I don't remember the exact terminology, but in book 1 to go sit with the queen and her children, Arya doesn't want to go on that. She wants to explore. And so that's just who she is. But it also kind of shows how important Yoren is to the wall. He's someone that's not only trying to get recruits, he's also getting, things that the wall needs. Parchments, all those things for Maester Aemon, being able to send messages, all that. Because, if you're at Castle Black, nobody's really coming to trade with you, right? The only people that are probably going to come trade to the wall is going to be at Eastwatch. And we see a lot more of that perspective from Jon in the 5th book, the way he has to deal with all these micromanaging issues of the wall. But it shows how somebody like Yoren is very vital to the actual survival of the Watch. The men ignored her, but not so the boys. She was 2 years younger than the next orphan boy and skinnier and smaller. She was also silent, which the boys took for her being stupid, scared, or deaf. Arya just is not a normal child, right? If you think about kids, especially Arya that age, they like to play. They're not usually like very, silent and quiet, not interacting with other people. That's just not usually how children are, right? And so, yes, that's not to say every child's like that, right? But I would say generally Arya gives off very weird behavior because she's much more mature. She doesn't want to interact with all these other people because she realizes that could get her in trouble. But other boys, they're going to see that as weakness. They're going to pick on her because she's different. That's just how it is. Unfortunately, that's just how the world seems to be. The people that are different, especially, I think children can be brutal to each other. The people that don't fit in, a lot of times, they will get maybe made fun of. And I have experience. I don't think I was ever personally bullied, but I know if some of my friends were before I moved when I was younger. But children suck to each other. That's all I got to say. But getting back to Arya, one day as they had been crossing fields and orchards, Lami had asked where she had gotten her sword. As Arya notes, he was a dryer's apprentice before he got caught stealing. Lami, again, desperate, wanted stuff. I can understand why he would steal. Arya thinks about that exact thing in her last chapter as well. But it's also weird. If you think about it, Arya seems to be this orphan boy. How does she have a castle forged sword? That's going to come off as really weird automatically. It's something I think is quite interesting. Why didn't Yoren take it from her? If I was Yoren, I would have told her they need to hide it. Like, it needs to be hidden within some of the supplies going to the wall, because that's going to give off a lot of attention. Why would she have that? As he continues pushing for how she got the sword, Arya gets a bit nervous, chewing her lip, but she was determined to not go crying for Yoren's help, showing a little bit of that anxiety that Arya is having. If you want to compare it to, say, for instance, House of the Dragon, when you have Alicent, how she's biting her nails, and everybody has their quirk, right, towards anxiety. I am someone that tends to shake my leg a lot. I don't know, I just had that since I was very young, but this is just Arya's thing, chewing her lip. Hot Pie suggests maybe she was a squire, as Arya notes his mother had been a baker and he pushed a cart through the streets all day shouting hot pies, but then his mother had died, given how he gets the name Hot Pie. But also kind of a tragic story for Hot Pie, right? Seemed like he had a decent living at least until his mother died, and that's also very tragic at a young age, something Hot Pie and Arya could maybe connect on, right? But that's not going to happen yet. We're still on not great terms with Arya and Hot Pie, as they're going to press her, right? How did she get this sword? And also, they're bigger than her, right? So they're going to be thinking in their head, they're going to be like, okay, we can just take this sword from her, right? They have nothing, more or less. That'll get us into page 24. They continue noting he is no squire, and the sword probably isn't real, just tin, which makes a lot of sense, right? An orphan boy having this sword makes sense they would kind of be fake. But Arya hated them talking about Needle, telling them that it was real, and they better shut up, glaring at them. The boys laughed at her, and Hot Pie once again asked where she got the sword, as Lami suggests she probably stole it, which does seem likely. If I was in Lami's position, that's probably what I would guess as well. And Arya's pissed at this, noting it was not stolen. She could bear being called names, but not Jon and her family really being called thieves. Hot Pie reasons if she stole the sword, it isn't his anyway, and he could use a sword like that. Lami then dares him to take it off of her. Hot Pie, again, is just rationalizing, okay, if I'm stealing from somebody, it's okay because she stole it from somebody else. That's basically his logic, even though it's still stealing, right? It's trying to justify why you do something. Arya tries to justify stealing in her last chapter, right? Because she's going to die if she doesn't. It's for survival. Hot Pie edged closer with his donkey as Arya describes him having a fat face, sunburnt and peeling, with straw hair. Not a great description of Hot Pie from Arya, but Hot Pie tells her she does not know how to use the sword. Arya wanted to say yes she did, as she had killed the stable boy back in book 1. She could kill him as well from annoying her, but she dare not in front of Yoren. She had not even told him about the stable boy. She knew some of the men here were murderers, especially the ones in the wagon, but it was different for her. They were looking for her. Arya is trying to avoid all attention, right? Telling Yoren that she killed a guy or a boy. I don't think Yoren would really care that much, given the boy tried to turn her in. I think he'd be a bit concerned, given she's still a child and killed somebody already. But it's something that if I was Arya, I would also probably keep to myself. At this point, especially when you're in a very perplexing situation, maybe wait until you're back in Winterfell. When you and Yoren are parting, you maybe tell him the truth of all this stuff. For now, it doesn't seem to be the most important thing going on. But yeah. Lami taunts her again, asking if she's going to cry, which Arya admits while thinking she had during the night over her father, and woke up red-eyed and dry. She could not shed another tear, for life depended on it. Hot Pie thinks she's going to wet her pants when Gendry steps in. And I want to read kind of this scuffle that's going to happen, a little bit of Gendry's introduction, but something to think about. Arya is still a kid. Losing your father, she's going to cry over, she's going to be sad, all those things, it's completely normal. Just shows the state of mind she's in, right? Angry, depressed over all these different things. But yeah, let's get into the description and kind of the fight that happens on page 24 and into page 25 as well. Leave him be, said the boy with the shaggy black hair who rode behind them. Lami had named him the Bull on account of his horned helm he had polished all the time but never wore. Lami didn't dare mock the bull. He was older and big for his age, with a broad chest and strong-looking arms. You better give Hot Pie the sword, Ari, Lami said. Hot Pie wants it bad. He kicked the boy to death. He'll do the same to you, I bet. I knocked him down, I kicked him in the balls, and I kept kicking him there until he was dead. Hot Pie boasted. I kicked him all to pieces. His balls were broke open and bloody, and his cock turned black. You better give me the sword. Arya slid her practice sword from her belt. You can have this one, she told Hot Pie, not wanting to fight. That's just some stick. He rode nearer and tried to reach over for Needle's hilt. Gendry, first introduction, right away, pretty impressive. He's a big dude, especially for being so young. Like, he's very muscular. He's a little bit like Robert himself. And also, it's just, Arya preparing basically to have to fight, which will get us into page 25. Arya then hit her stick on Hot Pie's donkey, making it buck. It sent Hot Pie to the ground. She left from her own to hit him a few more times on the ground, drawing blood as she turns to Lami, asking if he wants it as well, but he holds his hand in front of his face, squealing to get her away. Just showing Arya is quite resourceful. She's quite smart. She's good on her feet, right? She thinks very quickly. Like, yes, Hot Pie might be bigger than her, all these things, but she uses kind of the advantages she has. Hit the donkey, make Hot Pie go to the ground, and then she can attack first. It's just Arya what she does. She's very smart at these things. Gendry warned her as Hot Pie was grabbing a rock. She let him throw it, dodging it, and continuing to beat him bloody all over the place and over the back of his head, the whole time dodging his hands, trying to get her. She went into her water dance form and lunged at him, getting him again between his legs. Hot Pie is getting the worst end of the deal here, and a little bit of this is definitely Arya taking out her anger, her frustration on Hot Pie, and that's not to say that Hot Pie wasn't asking for it, right? He was trying to steal from her, but Arya does go, I think, a little bit over the top, as she basically completely almost kills Hot Pie. Eventually, Yoren was there, pulling the boy up, who seems to have soiled himself. Yoren puts an end to this, asking if she wanted to kill him, but Yoren also whirls on the others, threatening them if this happens again, and he tells Arya to follow him. A number of things has to happen. Arya has to get her punishment, for one, but two, he wants to put her to the side. He's realizing some of the issues she's dealing with in terms of her father's death, but Arya is forced to follow Yoren. They were all staring at her, but Arya was half dragged away from the group into the wood as Yoren berates her, telling her if he had any sense, he would have left her in King's Landing. He tells her to pull down her breeches and to not worry, no one can see. And Yoren is quite an interesting character because he didn't need to help Arya. It isn't like in the show at all, where Ned tells Yoren where Arya is and basically begs for help. Yoren goes out of his way to kind of help Arya. Right now, Yoren was staying back because he was supposed to transport Ned himself, so he already had this plan. He was going to be taking a Stark, but he gets the wrong one. He gets Arya instead, and he wasn't planning to do that. He didn't need to do that, right? He puts more risk on himself by doing this. It's a great deed that Yoren is kind of doing for Arya and kind of the Starks as well, but that'll get us into page 26. Unfortunately, Arya is going to have to be punished by Yoren. To see that there's some equality here, that there's no favoritism, right? Because he doesn't want to put a target on Arya's back that she doesn't get any punishment for acting out, right? Yoren wants it to be as natural as possible, that there is no favoritism here, that he doesn't know her beforehand. Arya did as she was told and was told to hug a tree and to scream loud. Again, Yoren wants Arya to scream loud not because he wants to hurt her or any of these things, but because he wants the others to hear that, right? Keep them in place and all these things. This is what happens if you act out, right? But also he wants her to scream loud because he's not trying to hit her that hard. He wants to hit her, enough to where it is going to leave some sort of mark, but he wants to do it in a way that is the least amount of damage to Arya as possible. Arya stubbornly thinks that she won't, because Arya just doesn't understand what's going on here. She doesn't understand what Yoren's trying to do. But when Yoren laid the wood against her back, she let out a shriek, all the same as he continues hitting her 2 more times. The last one Arya flinches at as she hears it coming. She felt the blood going down her thigh, and it hurt a good amount from the sting. Yoren tells her that hopefully he has got her attention now, and next time she assaults a brother, she will get double what she gave. Just, again, trying to make it to where There's no more fighting in here. Don't put a target on her back and all of that. It still sucks that Arya has to, basically get beaten, which just didn't almost never happen at all. But, that's just how it was in this world. But, yeah. Arya thinks they are not her brothers as she pulls her breeches up. And at this, Yorn asks if she is hurt, to which she tries to remain calm, like Syrio taught her. She says, some. Arya's just trying to take it, right? She doesn't want to talk about all these feelings that she has. And even the brothers comment, it makes her think of her family. It makes her think of, all the people that are missing right now, thinking of Jon. Yoren says hitting Hot Pie or Lami won't bring back her father, to which Arya sullenly says she knows. And that's the whole truth of this, right? It was more than, Lami and Hot Pie messing with her, right? She could have just knocked him off the donkey and let him be and kept going. But she didn't. She kept beating him up and, bloodying him, nearly killing him because of her anger, her sadness. And we understand where Arya is coming from, right? Loss can lead to a lot of different reactions. That was what book 1 was really all about. And Arya is going a different way, lashing out. And Yoren is trying to set her on a better path. But at this, Yoren tells her something she does not know. When he was set to leave, someone with a boy, a purse of coin, and a message told him to wait as Ned would be heading for the wall. But something went wrong. Again, we know that this was Gendry, for 1, being delivered to Yoren. 2, we know that, okay, this is probably Varys who was all behind this, but it tells you more importantly that Ned was always supposed to go to the wall, and Joffrey acted out. But why did Joffrey do that? And it seems that Littlefinger was the person that kind of egged him on to do those things. But the real question here is, why did Varys have Gendry sent away? It's an interesting question. Does Varys want to use him later on? I think Varys is going to try and use Edric Storm, and I think Gendry going to the wall makes a lot of sense. If you're Varys, you know where Gendry would be. But that isn't going to occur exactly like how Varys probably wanted it to. But this is definitely going to be news to Arya, because Arya wouldn't have known any of this background information. She wasn't at court, right? All she saw was what she saw in her chapter, right? That Ned, confesses and then is killed. And Joffrey orders it. So Arya knew it was Joffrey. Someone should have killed him. As Yoren agrees, someone will, but it won't be either of them, as he instructs her to take some sourleaf to help with the sitting. Arya wants revenge on Joffrey, and you can understand why, right? Arya is almost us, the reader, right? She can't kill Joffrey. It's just not going to happen. But it's us also wanting Joffrey to die. But it's also foreshadowing, because someone eventually will kill Joffrey, and her sister will basically be involved, even though she doesn't know it at the time. Arya later thinks it did help some, but it tasted terrible. But either way, for the coming days, she walked, as she was still too raw to sit the donkey. Hot Pie had truly been worse. He had been placed on a wagon, but he whimpered at every bump. Lami, on the other hand, stayed as far away from her as possible. And that's the thing, right? In this world, if you get injured really badly, there's no safe travel. There's no get in a car. There's no get in a plane. There's none of those things. You're going to have to basically be, in a wagon where it's every time there's a different, rock, or there's just not a great path, you're going to feel that, right? And that's kind of what Arya's realizing. I think she definitely feels a bit bad about it. That gets into the last page 27 of the chapter. Again, not a long chapter, which I'm actually kind of glad of. If you guys don't know, I have another channel, a football channel, and I basically commentated for 3.5 hours, and it's completely taken my voice almost, but we're getting through it. But getting into page 27, even Gendry noticed that every time she looks at him, he winces, but Arya did not respond. It seemed better to not speak to anyone. Arya doesn't want to form any type of connection with anyone, because she doesn't want to slip out something that may reveal herself. She doesn't want to get close to anyone, because she realizes also that she's not going to be with these men for a while. And also, she has it in the back of her mind that all these people are willing to sell her out. And so Arya is trying to distance herself from everyone. But that night she lay looking up at the comet, of which Gendry had named the Red Sword. Gendry believed it looked like a sword come out of the forge. Again, everybody has a different interpretation of the Red Comet. It's what connects this entire story in Clash of Kings. And Gendry, of course, he was a smith before this, right? He was good at forging swords and helmets, all those things. Of course, he's going to think it's something to do with a forge. Arya agreed it looked like a sword, but not a new one. It looked like ice, with the blood of her father upon it. Yoren had made her look away, but she still imagined it. Arya has her own interpretation, right? And if you even think about the way, if you visualize Game of Thrones right after Ned's death, and you see ice with the blood on it, you can definitely see why Arya would come to that conclusion. It's just everybody has their own idea of what they think happened. But when at last she dreamed of home and her family and seeing them again. Yorn had promised to take her home with no one knowing, but a part of Arya wished she could go to the wall first to see Jon and have him call her little sister and mess up her hair. And both of them say they missed the other as they used to speak at the same time a lot. She wished that more than anything. Arya ends this chapter with dreaming of home and where that journey will take her. We know that journey will not go as Arya had planned, but that is what she wishes for. And I think that's very human, wanting your home back, the people the people you care about, as she's basically going to be lost in the wilderness. But thank you guys all for watching part 2, chapter 2 of my Clash of Kings reread. Next week, it'll be Sansa 1, everybody's favorite POV. Everybody's favorite POV. We all love Sansa, of course. There's no divide on that character at all. But I'll see you guys all in the next one. I hope you all enjoyed. Bye, guys.